Hey guys, welcome back to Vertice Models. Today I'm showing you quick and effective weathering techniques for metal, as well as showing you how to do really easy lenses. Most of the time I like to start out with a dark base metallic, something I can build upon, and I'm using rough iron just as a base, and I just get it really wet and get it everywhere on the model. Next will be dry brushing, and I'm using old gold. And so mainly, I'm just gradually building up the color on top. And you can stop at any point, but I like to have like a nice gradient from that light to dark metallic color. And then I'll go back with just a point brush, with just straight up that color I just dry brush with, and we'll just make the edges opaque. And then we'll add like nicks and dings, and this will basically be like my spot color for the next highlight. Everything's nice and loose, nothing's that accurate, making happy mistakes along the way. Next we'll be using silver, and same method, I'm just catching the edges and adding highlights to those dings, as well as breaking up the model with the silver ring around the eye. And then we'll be using an oil paint. These are my Artscape. I bought these on Amazon, and I really like these because they dry really fast, but I like to use these for weathering. In this particular case, I didn't use any spirits or anything to thin it down. I'm just using it straight out the tube, and then I'll just use a sponge and just wipe away what I don't need. And since it's oil, it's nice and leaves a soft gradient, as you remove the material. And if you do it a little thinner, you'll get an even nicer gradient in your cracks and along the edges of things. But here I'm just keeping it simple and quick. Next, for the lens, I use 3 colors: a black, a medium gray, and then a light gray. So in this case I used a matte black, uniform gray, and then an ash gray. And then I'll go back with just straight white, add the little reflection dots, and then the rim light catching the side. And then for our base color for that, I'm using Fire Lizard. This is going to be like a red eye, and so I just thin it down a lot, and so all that underneath will show through, and then we'll just base that whole lens there. And then I like to use the game inks, and I thin this down as well, and then we'll just like fill that eye with that ink. And everything's non-destructive, so it's wet, so I can remove as much of it as I want. I could soak all of it back out and try to, do another pass. But that's what it looks like when it dries. And I also like to use an ultra matte varnish on the lenses, because it kind of raises the contrast of that eye a little bit. So for the next one, we're doing a different technique. We're dry brushing still, but at the same time we're doing a different scheme. So just basing this with gunmetal over top of the rough iron. And then I use silver as a highlight again. And we stippled it on there, caught some edges. And then for this oil, I wanted it to be a little rusty. So I used the gold yellow oil paint. And just putting it where I see fit. And you can remove as much of it as you want. Just putting it where I think it makes sense. And then just using the sponge, we'll just wipe away any excess. And visually, you know, it creates a lot of noise on the surface because you can see as I wipe it away, it's creating streaks over top of that metal, where I've stippled the silver on top of the gunmetal, which is on top of the rough iron. And so you get a lot of like accidental detail from doing it like this. And then for the lenses, I'm using Poisonous Cloud. For something small like this, I just went with two-tone black and then the lightest gray, which is ash gray, and then I did my white dots and then the rim line. And keeping it thin, we just fill those eyes. I like the way this looks, so I didn't even add an ink on top. I just kept it as is. I like the results. And that's the second one. And now for the third one, I did do a little bit of a different technique with the dry brushing. I did like streaking. So I'll get the paint heavy on the brush, and instead of going back and forth, I'll just go up and down, or rather down. And the reason I'm doing it this way is, yeah, it builds up paint, builds up more paint on the surface, but at the same time I'm trying to create a chip paint look. So having that streaking on there, you know, when it's catching the edges going straight down, it adds to that that painted look. And then I just use some really watery ultramarine blue on top of the white stippling that I created for the like paint chips. And then we're just going to be using the Van Dyke brown oil paint. And I'm just using this as something different. I just figured it would look good with the blue chip look on top of like the silver highlights that I did with it. And you can naturally create texture as well with the oil paint. And I'm not using any type of varnish or anything to seal the oil or anything, because I'm not sure if it's just as brand or wet, but I've been using it for years, and you know, it dries pretty much like acrylic. And so just using a sponge, wiping away the brown oil. And then same thing with the eyes, we use the black and then a lighter gray with the white dots, and then just using a watery Warlock purple. And then we did use a game ink on this, and there's just a purple game ink. And most of the time I just catch the darker section of the eye. But that is pretty much it. Hope y'all found this video useful and enjoyed it. And we'll see y'all next time. Peace.